Okay.
Hello.
Looks like we've got some office hours. Let me just rename myself.
Hi,
Hello.
Hello.
And then,
good evening for my time.
Good
So I think
evening.
it's evening too for you.
yes, it is. But it's been raining
Okay.
all day, so I'm happy to be here. I've got nowhere else to be. All right, let me look at some of these questions we got. But generally, how are these run? Do we do them like formally, Linux Foundation, welcome, here's our requirements, or we just leave it open to discuss?
I don't know if we really do any disclaimers before. I think we just jump in, start with like intros. So however you want to highlight your amazing selves. Um, if you have any preference on question order, if not, depending on time and things like that, I'll start with the first two and then go ad hoc,
Okay, cool.
keep it random. But if you want to take the conversation in any path, and then for each question, I'll start with Sal, or I'll start with Hero. Help me with that, with the pronunciation of your name.
It's Edgiro.
Ijiro. Okay.
I hope my
Spanish is
network
like,
does not, I hope my network doesn't mess up, but you were breaking it too. That was why I was not able to answer you. But I guess I'm good.
is e one more time. Ijiro. My head wants to say something completely different.
Okay, you didn't hear me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I heard you. I'm trying to pronounce your name.
Okay, my name is Ejiro. Ejiro.
Ijiro.
Yeah,
Ijiro.
yeah.
Ijiro. Thank you. Okay, so
Thank you.
I'll start with one or the other, Adriel or Sal, and then yeah, we'll just take it from there. I don't know if you want to give folks like another 2 minutes to join, or if we're just ready to start.
yeah, we'll give it a few minutes. But yeah, what time is it where you're at? You're on East Coast time, right?
Yeah, it's afternoon. It's 12.
It's not bad.
Yeah, and I work with most folks from West Coast, so my day's just later. So the morning's like mine. It's really nice.
Yeah, I was talking to this company and they're like, how do you handle having meetings all over the world? I was like, they're all in PST time zone. I just start at 2 p.m.
That's it. And if you do have anything else, it's like one, like
Yeah,
during the morning or day. And it's like, okay.
that's fine. But yeah, looking over these questions, there's some good ones, so I'm excited about this.
Yeah. Yeah. Highlight whichever you want specifically, but I'll start with it too. Give it a minute.
And these ones don't have to come first, but they're good ones.
Okay. I'd help, because if not, I'm just gonna eeny, meeny, miny, mo. All right, so we'll just kick this off. Welcome everyone. Thanks for everyone that's joining us and those watching us live. We're gonna kick off July's 2025's community office hours, making your first contribution to OpenSSF. With me, I have Sal and Idro. Idro, would you like to introduce yourself? And then pop it over to Sal.
Okay. Hi, guys. My name is Ejiro Ogenekume. I'm from Nigeria, and I am in the cybersecurity space. I'm trying to make contributions into the OpenSSF group. So I don't know. I don't know what other introductions you want me to make, but I guess that's all I can say for now.
Excellent.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
an interesting thing is I was a UI UX designer before, like trying to divert into cybersecurity.
Yeah.
Love that. Thank you. Sal?
Mm.
Yeah. So I've been in cybersecurity a while, and I came originally out of like the Department of Defense area, and then when I crossed over to open source in the public, I really stuck around ISVs or corporations that particularly provide to regulated services. So that means that, yeah, my entire career has been open source security of some sort. But I really enjoy doing the open source side of things because it tends to be the best security practices, focusing on transparency and communication across corporations, best thing you can do to prevent a breach. So I enjoy it.
Love it. Great contributor throughout open source. So we're going to start with the first question. I know uh, the two of you just recently released a blog on making your first contribution. So we'll start off with one of the questions that I get asked is like, who can become a contributor to at least open source, OpenSSF, and is OpenSSF just open to everyone? So I'll start with
I'll jump in on that, and then Ichiro, I'm interested in your perspective on it. So OpenSSF is definitely open to everyone, and I think the thing that people don't always realize is that there is so much that has to happen around a code contribution that is not code for it to be successful. And there's also a very high correlation in the fact that the better a developer is, the worse their documentation will be. So in that environment, I think I've seen a lot of interesting people come in and make their first contributions, and they come from everywhere. And you can never predict what a really, really good contributor is going to look like. I'll tell you, one of the strongest contributors I ever had to an open source project once ended up quitting our project because they had just started at Stanford as an undergrad, so they'd been contributing during high school, and no one ever noticed because their contributions were great, right? So it doesn't require a formal background, formal training. It requires the ability to show up and think about a project and ask questions. And then I've also had people come in from other areas of life, not just tech transfers. Another really good developer that I ran into was someone who had just started making open source contributions to security, and they were a firefighter in their day job. And they said they liked the kind of energy that it brought and the fact that they could contribute like a security posture that was defensive. So yeah, bringing in a mindset that comes from somewhere else is super useful. Um, and we could always use more developer marketing, developer communication, and more blogs from people who perhaps write words better than code.
you.
That's useful.
Very useful. And I like that there's an energy to open source. I see that there is.
Yeah. Ejiro, so far, in OpenSSF, what are your opinions on who contributes and what that looks like?
Okay, I think with my experience, my little experience with OpenSSF and maybe generally with open source contributions, I feel like there are a lot of other things aside code-based contributions that people can make. And for example, documentations. Like there's always a part where you have to make documentation. I mean, in every contribution you are making. So I feel like, yeah. So aside people that write codes, people that could make documentations, and like Sal said, people that are better with words, that can write blog posts better, because I believe that there are people that also have the skills to be writers, and they would do well at maybe putting words together and writing posts. Yeah, so that's what I have to say about that.
Love that. And like as you're saying that, I was also thinking, and not just in English and other languages, because open
Oh,
source is
yeah.
such a global community that we're reaching
Yeah.
folks. Yeah. Idira, did you want to say more on that?
Oh, I really didn't think about that before now, but since you said it, it's a very great concern, and it would like involve a lot of other persons making contributions, because let's imagine us having somebody that will be contributing to something in another language. That's a whole lot of contribution on its own, but getting somebody that can do something in another language. So that it's not code-based, but just making translations of maybe a blog post and putting it out there. It's also a great way.
Yeah, and the
Yeah.
social media too. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to do a quick call out for the CNCF vocabulary repository or language repository because they've got every single like cloud native term and subgroups around languages where people vote on the best way to translate them. And I had to give a talk on the vulnerability supply chain in Spanish just one time, and it was so hard. And if I had not had like a community of engineers that were just like sitting there debating on how we should say supply chain of vulnerabilities in Spanish, because it's not a supernatural thing to say in Spanish,
Yeah.
does it translate to the same effect? Um, yeah. So I think like language interoperability and communication, those are major, but it also, all of these are kind of exhaustion or like the byproducts of like engaging with code and documentation. So you will very naturally find yourself trying to translate, especially a lot of the metaphors that we use are so English specific in
Hmm.
this environment. You will often find yourself having a question about like what something means, back translating it, and then go and open source even that thought and take that to the CNCF vocabulary section. And see if anybody's reported on it because I get a lot of insights and clarification even to like just terms we use. If I see
Hmm.
it in 2 or 3 language translations, it gets a lot clearer for me. I love that repo.
That's awesome. I didn't know that existed. Yeah, I know I did a Spanish podcast once on cybersecurity, and I was just like, my brain was not computing. I'm like, how do you say
Honorabilidades. It's like the
on
one
it?
in Spanish I cannot say. I can't say that
Yeah,
word.
it's terrible. What was it for me was saying cybersecurity in Spanish was cibernética.
Cibernética. Ciberseguridad.
Ciber.
You can say that. That's fine.
Yeah, and there's a top part. It's like ciber, but anyway, we digress. But yeah, that's an also another way you can come in from social media, from translating a blog, from translating glossary, the README files. That was usually my first contribution was like, I'm gonna try to start and run this program, and I'm gonna update their README, like how to get started and add things that I needed to move on. So we've talked about a few things that folks can do, but what are fears that you might have about contributing to open source? Start with back to you, Saul.
Okay. Fears on contributing. I don't have fears about contributing, but I've realized that there's probably something wrong with me neurochemically for that to happen because I help people getting to their first PR so often. I used to track it, and it was up to like past 74 or something before I stopped tracking, just helping people go from like, just make your first public contribution. And then I will typically like be with them on a call as they go and they like press the button with this like maybe 170 lines of code that they've just spent 3 months like obsessing over because they're going to make it public. Um, and then they push the little button and I say, great job. Did you die? No, you're fine. It was just pressing a button. Now you have to go do the real work and get feedback. Um, but I think once you realize that, like, one, you're doing public work around people who are doing public work, the point is to interact. The point is to make it like chunk-sized communication about what you want to do and the code you want to contribute. And then number two, there is like an open source energy to things, and it's kind of the like pick up the mop principle. This is something that I learned from a friend of mine in hardware who got a job because they showed up for an interview, but before the interview, they saw that there was a spill in the hardware center. So they went and they mopped it up, and they didn't have to do the job interview. They said, hey, you're hired. That's what we're looking for. And open source is filled with people that are going to go and pick up the mop. And if they see you pick up the mop, they're way more interested in what you're doing. So yeah, I think, yeah, not being afraid because you realize it's just a person sitting on their computer in their own room on the other side, and that they're probably incredibly grateful that you helped.
They're like
Take-
friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, Jiro, anything to add?
Okay. Okay, so I would say fear, and I would also say misconception. And this is not coming from just me, because I think while I started on my career, I was able to interact with a lot of persons that were trying to like navigate a way to make open source contributions, and we talked about it. So this is about me and also about them. So I would say there is a misconception of the skills that are needed for you to have to make a contribution to open source. I don't know if that makes sense. So for example, we're talking about like the things or which people that OpenSSF is open to, and we're able to clear out that it's not just people that can write code. Now, I don't think everybody gets this idea that they can also make non-technical contributions to open source. So they feel like they need to know everything put together. And the fact that they do not know everything put together before trying to make a contribution to open source gives them a certain kind of fear. And also it did that happen to me also. I'm not going to lie about that, but I feel like I'm navigating through that. And also a rejection of the contributions that somebody makes. I think Styles kind of said it, but I would put it in the way of like, if somebody has decided to make a first-time contribution, they are scared of the kind of feedbacks that will come from the contributions that they have made, and maybe it could delay them submitting their pull request and all of that. So I don't know. I feel like that's what I think about the fears that are associated to making open source contributions. And that happens mostly when you're making your first contributions. And I feel like if you're able to like understand that you do not need to get all of the skills put together to make a contribution, and your contribution also does not need to be perfect, you can put things together, make a first contribution, and from there, I feel like the going gets better.
I love that. Yeah, I think from my experience, and this is more of a joke, but I think the only pull requests that get denied are vulnerabilities people find. They're just like, nah, fam, this is a feature. Yeah, and I know one of the times when my first like video like jumping into one of the open source meetings, they're like the first thing was like, oh, does anybody new want to introduce themselves? And they call my name, and I was like, so I left the meeting. I was like, no. So there is some level of like fear when you're first going into this new environment, especially in the internet. Like we hear about trolls and making a pull request. I mean, my mind is already traumatized by the internet trolls, and I'm just like, maybe this is where they live too, but they don't. Um, how Ijiro, we're gonna continue on with you, but how can somebody interact and counteract the imposter syndrome that comes with it? Because part of it, at least when I jumped off, I was like, oh, I'm nobody. I'm just here to listen and be a ghost. So I'm gonna leave. Um, and that kind of like it sits there and it still sits with me to this day, no matter what. But how are ways that you counteract imposter syndrome?
I feel like you just have to do it. You just have to try to speak at the end of the day, because if you don't, like things will get moving without you, and you want to be part of the system that is moving. So if you don't interact, if you do not interact and try to be part of the process, I don't know. I don't know how things can go, but I feel like mistakes are allowed. Try to understand that you can make mistakes. Everybody would make mistakes. And if you make mistakes, maybe I don't know, the English you speak or whatever, nobody's going to like try to judge that, because I feel like this imposter syndrome thing comes from how people talk, and maybe they've not like spoken with a lot of persons before. So if they try from 1 to 2, maybe talk to their friends that are already doing it, talk to people that have already done it, and like try to know how they overcame theirs, because I feel like everybody has their own thing on what they are trying to overcome. If, for example, somebody feels like they cannot do it because they do not have good vocabularies and speak good English, I feel like they can navigate that themselves. Then maybe me, I have another problem why I'm not being able to do that. I would also navigate that myself. So I feel people should talk. talk to the people closest to them, people they think that they can be vulnerable with, so that they will see how to navigate the particular issue that they are having. We're trying to like communicate with others and being in the open source space.
Yeah.
So
How to counteract imposter syndrome. I personally do not like even the concept of imposter syndrome. I think if you're experiencing imposter syndrome, it means you're having a physiological response that you can fully recognize to the idea that there is a threat in your environment. And I don't think you should try to bypass that at all. However, the stress can go down significantly if you realize what type of stress it was, right? You can get around social stress particularly by having a like intent when you're present to something. So when I work with mentees, I often say like you need to read a few papers on understanding locus of control and the psychology of locus control, but it's like three very basic things. Let's put things in three categories. Things you have control over, things you have no control over and never will, and things that are in that gray area of things you might have control over in the future. And so usually if I'm going to go and I'll engage publicly with like a meeting in the OpenSSF or reach out to a maintainer, it's because I've got a question for them or I want them to write a feature for me, and it will be a much larger discussion. But so I think like really going in with a purpose really helps. So you're not just going in blind, because it's not like going into a meeting room when you go into OpenSSF or a Linux Foundation meeting. Not to me. To me, it means I happen to be at the world's most efficient office hours for engineers, and they are all there to have anyone walk in and ask them a question. And it's not just a single professor, it's like all of the top engineers in these domains across many companies. So it's the best office hours in the world. So go in and like engage in open source with your own learning narrative so that you can like, when I see a really, really good PR, it'll be contextualized and it'll say, here's the code I'm contributing, or here's the issue I've got a question around. Because it's contextualized and here's what I've been learning or trying to build. Here's where I'm at and here's where I'm stuck. If this was something that you're interested in or something that we could fix within this project, is this something the maintainer wants to do or something you want my help with? Because I have a focus on it, but I'll need another set of hands on deck to understand it. So like, I don't think it's that hard when you just think about like you're there to get something done because it's something that you've been inspired to do, and you probably are going to need a little bit more juice than just talking over GitHub. Because once something gets complicated, that's the whole reason why these OpenSSF meetings are there. It's to get on, elevate to having a real-time discussion with the technical intellect that's available to you. So it's not intimidating at all if you're using the expert's time. It's extremely useful.
that's a very nice perspective because I like that where you come in with intent, like you come in with purpose. And even if it's like your purpose is like, hey, it's my first day, this is, what I'm interested in doing. And I know this is a great room to be in. I'm just looking to learn. Like that could just be your intent. But I love that once you get into it, you come in with the intent and purpose for that meeting, for your engagement. I think that's a very valuable gem that has been laid out here for the folks watching. Um, so when it comes to open source, right? Like there is code, but I know earlier we were talking about it's not the only way to contribute. So can we just like highlight what skills you need to contribute to open source security projects, either security or, any of the other fun groups that are involved in open source? Sal, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so the skills that you need to contribute to open source is, I would say, being able to have a time span attention of about an hour and a half. I know that's a weird requirement to have, but that's about how long that it will take you to read through all of the documentation of the average sized repository. That's probably the only skill that you need, because what you're going to do is go and find an open source project you're interested or implementing. You're going to read through that entire repository. And then you're going to continue reading more and more repositories until you build up a large project or large infrastructure, which is what we call production code, which you'll be paid for. So yeah, there's a very specific type of attention that you have to develop, and you don't have to remember all of the code, but you have to learn how to go through a repository, learning to look at the readmes, learning to look at the contributor graphs, knowing immediately who you would reach out to, the two people you talk to, the strongest maintainers or contributors. Um, so yeah, learning how to get a flavor for a project, that's really the only skill that you need because most of the learning around an open source project gets done in either implementing the tool or assisting with a development of the tool. And that's just step one and step two. But open source is really about having a feedback loop around the development of something. So once you understand that, you can be part of that feedback loop or watch it on a project and then engage, then you're good to go. But an hour and a half's worth of attention will be all you need to be highly skilled on a project, genuinely.
We had a question pop in from Stacy. Maybe some like GitHub skills, knowing how to navigate GitHub would also be an option of things to look at, like understand your platform.
Yeah, I'll let Jiro jump in after this, but for security projects, you really do have to have a slightly different set of attention on them. One, organizationally, they're likely to have a couple of more constraints on the PRs that they'll accept, which just means have a conversation with them in an issue before providing code. Um, and then number two, it's like 2FA and security scanning and hygienic merging. Um, these are all just elements of Git. So if you use GitHub or you use GitLab or you use Codebird, underneath, those are all the same Git mechanisms. So have a clear understanding of Git and version control in general for everything that you produce on the internet, especially if you're going to go and review your own code 5 years later. It's very useful to have. Um, but really, in security, there's just going to be a couple of checks. Usually, merges go a bit slower than in typical open source. But you will learn a hygienic practice of making sure to verify who you are at the point of making a commit, attest to that. Um, having the commit taken in and then scanned. There's always going to be security scanners on these. But that's not a skill you have to learn. It's really just a culture that you have to be aware of, that we're going to make sure that we have made this thing as hygienic as possible before intaking it, which is why when you're learning security, contributing to open source security is kind of the only place to be because you won't learn those practices
Mm-hmm.
anywhere else.
Jira, I'd love to hear your thoughts on skills you need to contribute and if you think GitHub and navigating GitHub would be a good option as well.
Okay, I feel like aside it depends on the kind of project you are contributing to know the kind of skills like you really need in terms of contributing to the particular project. But I feel like the very basic one is a good communication skill, I guess. Aside everything that Sir has talked about, I feel like it's also great for someone to like have a good communication skill because I feel like the open source space is somewhere that you have to communicate with a lot of persons. And having a communication skill so you can pass your information from one person to another or to a group of persons in a good way is actually very needed.
I have one more to add on that. Learn to say thank you.
Yes.
Like after that PR is merged, after you've made your contribution, remember that it's still a human being on the other side and say thank you for the completion of the process because it may have taken the maintainer more time to integrate it than it took you to write it. Um, and yeah, so often, especially when it's someone's first PR, I'll check in a month and say, hey, it looks merged. Did you say thank you yet? It's quick, go do it. That's something that we should all keep going.
Yeah, and I think that that's just a general rule in life. Just say thank you to people. Like, switching over to job hunting, I got a job because I sent a thank you email. They're like, it was between you and somebody else, but because you sent the thank you email, we accepted you. Like we chose you. And it's kind of like the mop idea, you know? It's like if you're gonna pick up the mop and clean up. Um, we're gonna continue with you. And if you've recently gotten into open source or cybersecurity, like what's worked for you and what do you wish you would have known before you started?
Okay, so what what has worked for me? I think reaching out to a lot of persons has worked for me. Reaching out to people in the open source space, I try to reach out a lot. And like I said, when I came into OpenSSF, Sal was the person that encouraged me to get into the space. And she has encouraged me to also reach out to a lot of persons. Oh, you have this question, reach out to this person. You have this question, reach out to this person. And be free to ask questions, just ask questions. I don't think that there's any problem in asking questions. I feel that is what I should have known better or done better at the early start of my career. And I mean, while I was doing UI UX design. So I wanted to contribute into an open source community for design. But something I have really noticed is that there are barely design contributions to make in the open source space. So I was in a community for more than 6 months. I didn't do anything. I didn't interact. I didn't do anything. I didn't ask questions. So I feel like if I did better at asking questions, maybe I would have gone further and maybe contributed more to the community and not being dormant for 6 months plus. So I feel that's what I would have done better. So interact with people, ask questions. There's really no problem in asking questions in the open source space. That is what I have come to realize. There's nobody that's going to tell you that your question is too dumb. And talking about the imposter syndrome, I feel like I've come to realize that you could actually tell the people that, okay, I really do not know this. So it's not too official. The open source space is not too official. So you could actually admit how you feel and what you want to do. If you are new here, say that you are new and you'd really love help in navigating the environment and getting help with making your first contributions. Ask questions. There's nobody that's going to shame you for asking questions. There's nobody that's going to insult you for asking questions. Everybody's even willing to help you come into the space and make contributions and make things better.
I love that. It's a lot of warmth. It's a very opening space where it's just like, oh, you're new? Oh, cute. Grab some time on my calendar, you know, and I'll help you figure out what the words and what all this means. Sal,
And
have you re
also,
go ahead.
I have another experience. I think I forgotten who I reached out to. I don't know if it was Marcella the first time I came, but I think I was scared to like ask question in the channel or the group on our Slack channel. So I sent a DM to somebody. The person had to tell me that I should send the question to the group so that I would have an insight from a lot of persons, which made sense, but I was scared to do that. But eventually I did, and I got an input from a lot of persons, not just her, but a lot of other persons. At first, I did not really, it didn't sit well with me, but again, I had to do it. And because I had to do that once, I did it. Nothing happened to me. Nobody insulted me, nobody cursed me, nobody did anything. Eventually, I got to see that, oh, I feel like the best thing is for me to put out my question out there because some other person might have had that question. It could help anybody and it could serve as a means of conversation. That question I asked could lead to something, could lead to an idea, could lead to any other things that could improve anything in the community.
Yeah. You could also, I've seen the effect where you give other people courage. Like if you do it during a meeting to ask the questions, like if it's silent and you ask the question, no, it gives everyone else courage to be like, well, they spoke up, I should speak up too. So have
Yeah.
you recently gotten into cybersecurity and open source? What worked for you?
Well, not so recently, but then I jump around it wherever I find it interesting. Yeah, so I think like when jumping into open source security, it's a really interesting space where it's best if you both develop a technical understanding and understanding of the toolings, but it also just moves way faster than most other areas of technology. So it is the kind of place where it's hard to put out, like as a hiring manager, what exactly it is you want, because what it is that you want is actually somebody that you can hire this quarter who's going to have a different or improved technical stack in 6 months, whereas in DevOps, it's usually 18 months. And that just requires someone who is genuinely interested in their work and their job. And you can see that in open source contributions. So I always choose the things that I feel passionate about, and I try to choose projects or way of working that I feel will personally leave me with less stress in about 5 years because they're making a critical and infrastructure impact. Um, and it really depends. I ask people when they're thinking about what they want to contribute to, like I say, okay, before you contribute to this, let's ask a couple of questions. Like if you're just starting out, if you contributed to this project and you were to explain it to like three people, living or dead, who you'd be incredibly proud to say you contributed to, like, why did you do this and what are you telling them? And security is one of those few places where people really do tend to have a really good, deep core answer. And it keeps them going as they're working. Because I do think that like open source is a sort of conduit between what you care about and the careers where you can engage because the source text is always available for you to work on. Um, and so like really finding the things that you can show up to in a year's time or 2 years' time because you like working with the people or you like working on the project. Yeah, you'll end up just finding a cadence of work. And I see that all the time now where I see people that have been working on the same project for 15 years or so just as contributors. That's what community is. So getting into it and having fun with it. But in terms of first time contributions, I will say I made my first time contribution a couple of months ago to a new project that was not in security. I was working on some data science for Chaos. We're doing foundation stats. And then I wasn't expecting them to have all of their security protocols set up. And I was very proud of them, but I had not signed all of my commits. So the best security practices have caught up with me all around the Linux Foundation. So really learning and understanding like how you authenticate your GitHub, how you're going to do 2FA, make sure that all of that is set up. Because security good practices for contributions in open source are definitely outside of just security now.
Yeah, and that's in part of like the terrors that we've seen where folks have, manipulated the community, the energy of open source. So getting your own personal security settings and your privacy settings set while you're onboarding and getting into is also like a great start and a good refresher for just the everyday hygiene. We're gonna move into the last set of questions, then we'll see if there's any other from the group, and then we'll leave with a final thought. So, this one is one that I hear common is like, I don't have time to do this, my time's very limited. So how do you set time or make time to contribute? How have you helped establish a habit of contributing regularly? And then for folks that are employees, like once you get into employer, how do you advocate for yourself with your employee to for them to allow you to donate your time to a project and continue this work maybe under, their umbrella? Sal, we'll start with you.
Yeah, open source buy-in. So I think the way that I make time for open source, because I will be contributing at about the same rate on the projects I stably contribute to. That rate does not change pending my employer or contract states. And it's a really specific and simple psychological uh, trait that I calculated the average amount of time the US citizen will spend playing video games in a week, and I said, I'd rather contribute to the Linux Foundation. Because it has many of the same aspects to it, right? It's going to be challenging, problem driven. You're going to get social interaction with things that are not characters, but in fact people. And you get to upskill all at the same time. And I think that saves me a lot of energy and being able to still contribute to open source. But then when you're contributing to open source along the profiles of something which looks like corporate engagement, then it's really about understanding why you are upstreaming to a project on company time. Are you utilizing it? Check number one. Are you potentially going to utilize it? Check number two. Those are the only two ways that you're probably going to do that on corporate time. And then is upstreaming to the project or making new contributions going to save developer time within your corporation, or is it going to reduce risk or security risks? That is why a lot of corporate attention goes into the Linux Foundation side of security because it's actually saving them on breaches and developer time downstream. So yeah, you'll choose to work on a set of projects that align well with a developer persona while you yourself are engaging in the upstream feedback loops on where's that roadmap, where's that going. The difference between a lot of times a like 10x developer and let's say a 5x developer, because everyone's using AI and assistants now. The difference in that is usually somebody that understands the direction of an open source project because they communicate with or they stay up to date with an evolving open source tool. So yeah, that's what I look for.
Yeah, I like that. There's also organizations, some thought process as you're speaking is that there's organizations that have open source teams as well. So you can just see what that organization's work. Like let's say there's a company like you can see what the that company uses as open source and work with their open source, teams, or become a part of their open source. That's kind of one path that I took is I'm working with the open source team at Microsoft. So now my time that I'm allowed to use, I use it more for like advocacy and promotion and more of that like public speaking piece. So it's not just the technical side, it's also being able to like be out there and represent and try to bring folks in. Um, Adira, I'd love to hear your thoughts on like how do you make time to contribute? Like how have you established as somebody who's recently come in, um, have established this habit of contributing regularly?
Okay, I feel like one thing I have tried to do is aside the meetings, fortunately for me, the meetings do not clash with my work hours. Like I told you, the meeting starts from 5 p.m. and I'm done with the listing. And I think I already scheduled my time beforehand to know that okay, I have this meeting this time, this day. So I would make sure I try nothing to like come in the way of me attending this meeting. And also, if I have some contributions to make, I would like do that outside my working hour because I think my environment or my space doesn't allow you to communicate things like, oh, I'm making open source contributions, so please can I have time from your workspace? I feel like we should consider that also. I wouldn't not can you hear me?
You froze a bit. You were talking about your employer would not give you time, and then you kind of froze from
Okay,
there.
yeah. So I feel like my environment does not like give you that opportunity to get time from your employer. So you have to like create a time after your working hours. After your working hours. That's how it works here a lot of times. If you ask a lot of people, persons from like Nigeria or Africa, they're going to tell you that, oh, they barely have those times or have that kind of conversation with their employers that they would hand them a time to contribute to open source projects and all of that. So they do it mostly after their working hours and all of that. And I think that's what's been working for me. And it's been working really well, really, really well for me.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. It's kind of like a quote someone told me is either your time controls you or you control your time. And from what I hear and gather from most, it's you have your set schedule and set it. For me, I'll have like the meetings and working groups that I'll join and be a part of. They're on my calendar. They're non-negotiable unless something critical happens that I can't make it. But even in just getting in the calls, taking time to read the repositories, um, just blocking out some time, maybe a reminder, and taking control of your time and what you're spending on instead of video gaming, as you know, Sal said, go try an open source, and use that same time uh, to grow yourself, connect with folks outside, and having that same community and energy feel. Um, we're gonna let the group pop in any questions that they have in the chat. But Ijiro, I wanted to know any last minute thoughts, advice, things that you want to leave, wisdom that you want to leave with our listeners.
Okay, I think yesterday I was having a conversation with Marcella. I thought she was going to be yes, so we could continue the conversation. But one thing we talked about is how to make it possible. My network is bad. Can you hear me? Okay, so
Yes.
we talked about how to make it possible for first-time contributions to be much, much easier. For example, a suggestion we had was talking about making maybe clearly outlining the need for a contribution. How am I going to explain this? For example, a good first-time contribution should have like a list of what is required of that particular contribution on GitHub. And I feel like we talked about GitHub lately, and Stacy asked a question of maybe some light GitHub skills. And yeah, I feel like if some persons are not going to make technical contributions, obviously they do not know how to navigate GitHub. So if it's possible for us to like not make, but reference them to like resources that will make them understand their use of the platform so they would know whatever is going on. Because I know that a lot of things we do run on GitHub. So for them to be able to understand what is going on there, we should create a resource for them to understand how the platform works, and also link them to something that could help them. If we cannot create resources for them to understand how the platform works, we can link them to resources that will help them understand how the platform works. And like I said, for a first-time contribution, we should outline under the contribution specifically what the contribution should entail, what it should be about. I feel like that's what we discussed the last time, and that's all I want to share right now. And it's going to help a lot for first-time contributions. It's going to help, I think, maybe have less questions and serve as a guide to people that are making those contributions.
Thank you. Sal?
Yeah, I think I think one of the things that I really love seeing that I wish I saw more on repositories to help people get started, but also just be honest about your own experience in building. I love it when I see at the bottom of a README a section that says like things that helped me understand this. And it's usually in like a paragraph style, and it gives links to like any resource that they used when they were learning about setting that up. And it doesn't take a lot of time. Doesn't take a lot of character space on your README. That is excellent. So I wish more people would do that because it's a nice kind of humble way for a maintainer to say, this is the edge of my knowledge, which helps a lot when you're negotiating that feedback loop on like what is the scope of features that this can be extended into. Um, and then if the entire like Git ecosystem was made according to Sal, I would love all readmes to have like 2 minute like YouTube videos that go over what it is about. But I want those to be as fun as possible because there's one corner of the internet and it's a bunch of developers that are working on applied category theory. So it's extremely nerdy, but they seem to be having a like inter-repository competition for who can have like the most low budget looking comic explanation of their projects. And it's delightful and it's also really, really useful. So yeah, those are things that are kind of useful when you're looking at a project or having fun with it. Like put a little bit of personality into your GitHub readmes because I have to read 12 or 17 of them a day. So video's nice.
That's nice. I never even thought about like putting a YouTube video on a repo. And like when you said that, I just thought of like cartoons where it's like, we're gonna join you on a journey today and teach you, just something fun. Because I mean, I think I've said this like 3 times this week, but security, it's too serious, and I get that it's serious and needs to be serious. But for me to learn, like I need to have a little bit of fun. Like I'm ADHD, I need the dopamine, like I need to be able to stay focused. And if it's just like nothing wrong about lectures at the university because I've gone through them, but if they very monotone, it's gonna be less likely for me to like join in versus watching somebody that animates it and makes it engage me. I'm like, that seems like a fun group. I'm gonna go over there versus like very strict literature. You're like, okay, we're back at university or back in school. Well, thank you both for your final thoughts joining us today. Anything else before we close out?
Well, I think if anyone's listening to this today and they haven't submitted their first PR to open source, go ahead and do it. You'll be fine. If you're still concerned about doing it, great, reach out to me. I'll help you push the button. It won't be too hard. But yeah, have fun with it. Look into security. And yeah, we'd love to see you around OpenSSF. I'll be on these calls. Talk to me.
That's awesome. Yeah, openssf.org/get involved, all together, lowercase. You can get links to the Slack channel and you can start asking questions. Even come in and be like, hi, I'm new. This is what I'm interested in. Is there a project? And people are going to be more likely to help you and guide you. And that's where you can get link, you can get your calendar invites and all the details that you would need to learn just to kind of get started and find something. But if not, go to Slack. That's my recommendation. Um, Great. Any last thoughts? All right. Thank you both. Thank you for our audience today listening. And for those watching on the recording, we'll catch you next month on the next office hours. Have a great day.
Bye.